Somebody's doing the hustle, Charles. Happy Sunday. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Good to see you as always.
Happy Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, right. Memorial Day tomorrow. Meet the Fraudsters, Charles. There's a happy family there.
You know, this is really another tour de force by the art department. So, I mean, they're just, I don't know why they're so motivated to outdo themselves week after week after week. But
well,
impressive.
Thank you. It's become, of course, a favorite of viewers of Crowdsource, The Truth, and Sunday with Charles. So I don't like to disappoint. And, you know, people may not recognize the guy in the center, the scruffy, as you might call him, but that's Mark Medvinsky. What's his name?
Medvinsky. And of course, you know, his fraud pedigree is very strong. I mean, his father went to prison for fraud. I think his mother had problems. I don't know about for fraud. But
my understanding is that the father went to prison for setting up the brother-in-law with a prostitute to try to do something with a real estate deal. Is that true?
I don't remember the particulars, but I do know that he went to prison for quite a while, and it's a large multi-million-dollar judgment.
Oh no, Jared Kushner's father set up the brother-in-law with a prostitute. It's hard to keep all these guys straight.
But at least Jared Kushner shaves.
Right.
Honestly, this is just, you look at this guy, and you'd say, all right, go be a stand-up comic. You know, he looks like Jerry Seinfeld, except Jerry Seinfeld always shaves. You know. So,
and of course, he's married to Chelsea, the world's expert on diarrhea.
Right, and you look at this crew, and I was prepared to give Chelsea Clinton the benefit of the doubt, as you and our viewers know, that here's somebody who you don't ask for your parents, and she's had a crazy life, being in the public eye since really almost birth.
Right, basically growing up in the White House, right? Teenage years, for sure.
And I think Daniel Halper, in his book Clinton Inc., I may have it wrong, but I believe it is Daniel Halper, wrote about the fact that when she was a little baby, and thereafter, her parents would sit down with her and say all these horrible things that people that might say about each of them, right, as a way of stiffening her spine. And I read that in the book, and I have never met Daniel Halper, but I'd had a very small role in his movie of the book, and he's a great writer, and it's a good book. That's child abuse. I mean, you don't take a little impressionable kid and say, well, so-and-so is going to say your father's a rapist, and so-and-so is going to say your mother is a lying cheater.
But that's just education, not child abuse.
You really shouldn't do that to these very impressionable kids. At a young age, they will believe anything that is said to them, particularly by a parent.
Right.
And you should not do that at that very little young age. But I had hoped that Chelsea, who is supposedly, by all accounts, in theory, is smart, but then you never know when political people go through these fancy schools, whether the teachers are just going to give the child an A, and the university is just going to give the child an A to get him in. And so we really don't know whether her marks are justified. We do know the one book that I read about, what is something about global, why healthcare should be globalized, was utter crap. I mean, I actually, when I read books, it doesn't make me an expert on books, but what I do, and it's kind of a nerdy thing to do, is I start out, there's a shock, but I go to the book and I look in the back of it first, and I look at the index. Do I like, what I see in terms of the index? Is it an exhaustive or is it just a cursory index? If it's exhaustive, that's good. Then I start checking footnotes. A statement is in there, and I look at the actual footnote and double check to make sure that the footnote supports the argument.
Right.
And with Chelsea's book, it most certainly does not. It's co-authored with a very famous academic, so you wonder how much of it was Chelsea's,
right,
how much of it wasn't. But we gave her the benefit of the doubt. We gave her a chance to do the right, have a Spike Lee moment, do the right thing.
Right.
And understand that what her parents have been doing, particularly since the time that she became a trustee in 2011, is epic charity fraud. And now, she's going to diss Donald Trump and say that Donald Trump does not speak for the United States of America, for the Americans?
It's just incorrect, isn't it? I mean, the man's the president, so he does speak for the United States of America. But this is a tweet you put out just 4 hours ago, Charles. Tell us about this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this in the morning and I said, listen, you cannot do this kind of crap. You can't go, just as Donald Trump is about to go to the UK, you cannot give this kind of an interview. It says here, in an interview with The Guardian at the Clinton Foundation office in Manhattan. Well, okay, that's supposed to be a charity. This is clearly a political stunt. She's clearly engaging in partisan political activity from the offices of the Clinton Foundation,
Crazy.
which is out against the law. You can't use the Clinton Foundation, which is a public charity, shouldn't be controlled by the Clinton family, but it is, in theory. You can't use it to score these political points, which obviously immediately get picked up in the global press. So for doing this, I gave her a chance. I'm a patient human being. I would not attack somebody who was, let's say, an 18 or even a 25-year-old son or daughter of a politician that's still young. But this person is now, let's be charitable.
Full adult.
She is definitely in her mid-30s, if not late 30s. And you're mouthing off like this. You have never worked an honest day in your life. You've never taken a job that you didn't get because of your family's connections. You're living in an apartment you cannot afford. Your husband is a failed hedge fund. I won't even use the phrase, but the first word begins with a D and the second word is bag, for what he did with this ridiculous Eagle Vale fund, which was raised by using, I believe, by using contacts of the Clinton Foundation in the process of marketing for the Clinton Foundation endowment. You raised a bunch of money, you lost a lot of money at a time where people were making money, and so you look at this team here, with Bill and Hillary Clinton, honestly, as their power fades and as people care to look into this track record, it's not like there was one surprising windfall. It's not like there was only when she gave birth to Chelsea in the operating table, she's trading pork futures or whatever, pork belly futures.
Oh, cattle futures. She turned $1,000 into like 500,000.
100,000 on
right.
As she was giving birth to Chelsea. Now, I don't know if you've actually been in the room.
That's good trading, Charles.
No, I don't know if you've been in the room. I have been in the room twice, only twice, when each of my children were born, and I can tell you.
You're not trading cattle futures.
Well, and my ex-wife was a Salomon Brothers and then Morgan Stanley banker, starting out actually on the trading floor of Salomon Brothers. And
right.
she knew a thing or two about trading. She was actually an expert on certain aspects of finance. The last thing she was thinking about is the price of cattle. It's a first, particularly with your first child and only child. I mean, it's not like it's a minor nuisance. Remove a little, fleck of something from your skin. I mean, you are, without being graphic here, I mean, it's a major league traumatic event.
Sure.
And you've got all these concerns. People do die in childbirth even now.
Well, but also just the emotional and psychological aspects of giving birth to your first child. You're not really thinking about commodities trading. I think also a lot of people don't realize the close relationship between the Clintons and Don Tyson of Tyson Chicken, who allegedly may have, that's agriculture futures, this guy's huge in chickens, there seems to be some connection there. And this isn't me saying this, there was a DEA investigation into Don Tyson because they were allegedly using these Tyson chicken trucks to drive cocaine all around the country from Mena, Arkansas, where it flew in as a result of Iran-Contra. And I don't know if you've seen Breaking Bad, but I feel like elements of Breaking Bad were based on that story. They had Los Pollos Hermanos, was the chicken company. Is
the Chicken Brother?
Chicken Brothers, exactly.
Well, just more narrowly on the actual trading of the futures, the way it worked back then, and I forget the name of the company that was the brokerage firm involved. But what they had back then, this was in the days of laxer regulations, obviously no internet. If you're trading on the pit in Chicago and you're trading all sorts of contracts and you've got all these passive investors, and it comes the end of the day and you got to decide how do you allocate your trading activity. So you take friends and you say, hey, Jason, you're a friend, you made $100,000. And then you take the losing contract and you put it in the hands of somebody else. And that's the kind of stuff you could do back then.
Manipulating the trades.
you could.
Is this Stevens Inc.?
It was. No, not Stevens Inc. I don't think it was Stevens Inc. Stevens Inc. is the big investment bank there. It might have been Stevens Inc. But
It says she briefly traded sugar futures and other non-cattle commodities, but more conservatively through Stevens Inc. Oh, I see. So there's someone else who she was doing.
And just to put that
Refco?
Revco, I think it was Revco. And so just to put that in perspective, you're sitting there and you're in Arkansas and you're Little Rock and you are, a housewife, a lawyer, and lawyers typically are not great traders. I mean, she wasn't even a great lawyer.
Why is that?
Because to be a great trader, you gotta have a nose for it. You gotta be the kind of person who was trading baseball cards when you were 6, and you're always betting on, this
This
bet
is a
and that.
totally different
It's a different
profession.
mindset. That a good lawyer, and Hillary is clearly not a good lawyer, is excessively cautious.
Right.
You look at something and you don't have
don't
a risk.
say this,
Yeah,
don't say that.
It's always what could go wrong. That's
Right,
what a good
right,
lawyer is thinking
right.
about. And
Risk averse.
Right. So to go from that to being somebody who's going to lever up and I'm pretty sure pork bellies are going to go up and cattle's going to go down, and sugar's going to do this, and you can't do that part of the day, because what happens when the pit is open, the prices go up, but then you remember the John Landis production, Trading Places.
Yeah.
Remember when they drive the price up and they drive the price down?
Shorting orange juice.
Exactly. You can't be. It's not a prudent use of your capital to even take 10% of your capital, as Hillary Clinton in those days, and be doing what she supposedly was doing. So
Wait. But let me ask you this: what if someone had $1,000? How the hell are you turning that to 100,000 trading?
It's completely implausible. It's completely implausible. It smacks of
It's fraud.
Of say getting paid, I don't know, $500,000 for the same speech over and over again. And so there's a long pattern and practice with the Clintons of fraudsters. And then like seeks out like, and here your only daughter is going to bring home the one person she's finally decided she wants to marry.
The one guy she could find who would.
Well, yeah, but and who do you bring home? The son of a fraudster. The son of a fraudster who went to prison. You can imagine, sitting there with Bill, Mark's first meeting with, when he's asking if he did ask.
What's your favorite scam?
Yeah, exactly. Tell me about your dad.
Right.
In prison for fraud. You're in.
Yeah, that's my kind of guy.
We'll get George Soros to pay for the wedding. Better yet, let's get the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, and then send emails to the yoga instructor all about it.
Right. And so we have as well, actually, let's go back to the picture just for a second. Because
It's still there.
Oh, it is.
The
Good.
magic of TV magic.
All right, there you go. So there you have the picture of Barack Obama appropriately in his native garb, and by that I mean a Hawaiian shirt. Don't go there.
No.
With his
That's
bride.
a Sidney Blumenthal move.
That's right. With his bride Michelle Obama, and we thought about, Jason and I, this is inside baseball for the viewers, we thought about whether it should be Michelle or Valerie Jarrett. In reality, Valerie Jarrett is more likely to have been the one very much involved with the fraud. Are you okay?
No, it smells like somebody smoking a cigarette in the hallway or something.
I can't smell that. But it's your fine-tuned nostrils there.
Yeah.
Jason. But anyway, so we decided to put up Michelle and Barack together, and what I would say to you, Jason, and to the viewers, is that this scheme was a scheme that was not as simple as just keeping Barack Obama in power for 8 years,
Right.
and then maybe putting Hillary in power for another 8 years. I think the game plan all along was likely to try to get Michelle in power for another 8 years. After all, she doesn't really have any credentials per se.
Well, she's
to run
a lawyer.
She surrendered a law license as well.
Michelle Obama?
Yes,
Why?
absolutely. The rumor is, I forget what the rumor is exactly, it was for, I forget what it is, but there was a disciplinary action for Michelle Obama as well. And so while, you could say it's true that Donald Trump had no political credentials to his name by the time he decided to run for what's the highest office in the world, but Donald Trump had a mega checkbook, which Michelle Obama does not have. Donald Trump also had experience putting up these skyscrapers and building projects in
Making
multiple
deals.
markets around the world. You can dislike the person for his foibles or whatever, but he does have a long track record of actually getting stuff done, and Michel not so much.
Right.
So I think this big scheme, this fraud, is one that doesn't just involve the 2015-2016 election. I think it's something that goes way, way back.
Now, Charles, do you remember offhand the name of the law firm that Barack and Michelle Obama worked for in Washington, D.C.?
I want to say, was it Aiken Gump?
Maybe. Well, here's what I'm getting at. The map,
I think it was in Chicago, actually, by the way.
they had an office in D.C. as well.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So what I'm getting at is there's an area of Washington, D.C. that I have noticed is very conspicuously not represented in Google Earth. Like, I don't know, this is something I want to show you, not to derail from our regular broadcast, but like, here's the Google Earth map of Washington, D.C. And if you look at it, most of Washington, D.C. is presented as these very detailed 3D models of buildings. And New York City is represented in this way as well. Most cities in Europe are represented in this way. I mean, you can really get some incredibly detailed views of buildings from Google Earth. And I remember when I spoke to Chris Peranto, who was an Army Ranger who nearly lost his life in Benghazi, he was very concerned about this feature of Google Earth because it allows people to very accurately measure buildings and to calculate trajectories for mortars and other weapons. And subsequent to that conversation, I noticed that this entire area of Washington, D.C. is very conspicuously not presented in 3D. And I forget the name of the law firm that Barack and Michelle worked at, but it falls within this area, as does Gowan, Rhodes, Winograd, and Silva, the law firm that is currently representing Imran Awan.
This looks like they're not, I mean, this looks very odd. I doubt that Barack and Michelle worked in like in a crappy sandlot park.
No. This isn't a sandlot. This is 2D satellite imagery instead of the 3D models of all the buildings. So it's 3D data redacted from the 3D map. And it seems like, all right, Superior Court, that makes sense. The White House, okay, we don't want, enemies of the government. National Archives, right. There are certain sensitive buildings in here, and maybe it's just a coincidence that these law firms are in here, but, last Thursday or Friday, we had an episode with Thomas Paine of True Pundit and Laurel Everly, who was a first-hand witness to some of the fraud of Imran Awan, talking about how Chris Gowan may have interfered with the U.S. Capitol Police and somehow confused or otherwise cajoled them into delivering evidence that he blamed me for, which, very weird.
All right, well, let's...
Sorry for that
that's
distraction.
Okay.
Just wanted to
where
show
we
you
were going
that.
there, but
That's very strange.
yeah. So we're starting on the slides here, and we do try to put slides up each week. We're going to keep it is a holiday weekend, so we're going to try to keep this to 1.5 hours.
Okay.
And what we are going to make the case here is that SPYGATE, as Donald Trump so eloquently calls it, and he is a master brander. I mean,
Yeah.
He's really very good at it. I believe that with regard to the Obamas, SPYGATE was a scandal, a scheme that really that was formalized, I think, by June of 2008. Prior to June of 2008, Hillary Clinton really thought that she was going to be the president of the United States.
Yeah.
And I think she got a paper chase moment, as we'll get into in a bit, where she that paper chase scene, take this dime and call your mother and tell her you're not going to be a lawyer. Take this dime and call Bill and say you're not going to be president of the United States. But beginning in June 2008, there really was a scheme put in place because I think by June of 2008, it was clear that McCain was never going to win. No Republican was going to win in November of 2008. And so the Democrats, the Clintons, the Obamas got together and said, all right, let's do this. We're going to, not only are we going to take the presidency, we're going to take the House, we're going to take the Senate. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Let's put, whatever we need to do to cement control over this United States of...
For the next 16 years.
Well, the United States of America, and beyond that, with that control, we'll do what we can. No one's going to oppose the United States of America with all our military might in the West. What we'll do is we'll insert sympathetic people into the various international governments or allies, the UK, France, Germany, etc., so that we really can, have decades of dominance and decades of unregulated globalism in which this corrupt scheme will flourish. So it's not about, as usual, the mainstream media wants to distract, look over here, focus on Russian collusion. It's not about this. This is a much bigger theft attempt where people have been asleep at the switch. There's a gigantic opportunity for crooks, and we see it. There are only 17 spy agencies in the United States that we know of. You put a crook in charge of every single one of them, which I suspect happened under Barack Obama. And now those crooks have the ability to vacuum out all kinds of information, find out all kinds of dirt on anybody who might go up against the deep state. Plus they have guns and weapons that we don't have in the private sector.
Right.
Unlimited money.
Yep.
And this was a bold attempt beginning by June 2008 that took place under Barack Obama's watch to allow the Clintons and the Obama administration, and I would argue George Soros, and not just because he's a convenient villain, but because George Soros has been on the wrong side of a lot of crooked activity around the world going way back, and other key people like Soros. This was an opportunity for them to go into a power vacuum, seize control, and then rub this country into the dirt, rub people who would oppose us, oppose them into the dirt. And for that, they cannot be allowed to escape unscathed. We can't have, history can't be written. So you know what, you can do this.
And get away with it. Yeah.
And get away with it, because it means that every 2 to 4 years,
somebody's going to try it.
Try it again. If Obama did that, I'm going to do this.
Right.
And it may come at it from, people may come at it from, extreme left leaning. They may come at it from a right leaning. They may come at it from, a white nationalist viewpoint or a black nationalist viewpoint. You can't have this kind of lesson stand unpunished.
Right.
So with that, we can go into the standard disclaimer.
Here we are.
There we go. And here we, for the new viewers who are out there, please understand that unlike the UK, and you had mentioned Tommy Robinson in the UK, unlike the UK where there is no real freedom of speech the way there in theory is in this country, we have an absolute First Amendment right to speak. We are not shouting fire in a crowded cinema. We are actually looking at facts that are out there and providing links, as you'll see in the presentation, so that our viewers can check our work, form their own conclusions. If viewers out there think we've missed something, please email us, contact us. Your contact information on Twitter is right there. Also, you can contact me via my site. And if you've got constructive comments, please make them. Understand that the correct way to do that is to start with one sentence. I want you to focus on this email because I think you've made a mistake with regard to this. And then you can spend 150,000 pages or whatever defending it if you want to, but you're going to lose our attention unless you could capture it in the first sentence with, this is why you should focus on the email.
Yeah, I mean, it's just virtually impossible. Somebody sent me pages and pages, and I just said, can we talk on the phone for 5 minutes? And the guy refused to talk to me until I read all of his stuff, and I just can't do that. There's so many people contacting.
Yeah, well, why don't you go out to the Sahara Desert, let me know how many grains of sand are there, and I'll be right back to you.
And then we'll talk about it.
But on the other hand, if you've got a succinct point, make it in an email, make it in a direct message to me or to Jason. I prefer emails. I'm old-fashioned, and I've never failed to respond, to my knowledge, to an email.
You're very good about that.
So this is the excellent playlist that Jason does for the Crowdsource the Truth viewership. And you'll see it's a large number, 76 different videos at this point. Not all of them have slides associated with them, but I want to say like 55 or so do.
Oh, probably more than that. I mean, it was only the very first, I mean, there's exceptions, like when we met with Dr. Corsi, it wasn't so much of a presentation as it was a conversation, so that one doesn't have slides associated with it. And some of the early ones didn't have slides, but I did just go through and make an effort to...
Look at that, 60,000.
60,000 views. People like Dr. Corsi. And you, so there.
I like you too.
Less so, but it's still good. So we've got that playlist there for people who want to keep up with Sunday with Charles.
And this is interesting, actually, if you look at the 60,000 views, 2.4 thousand up, meaning that 4% thought it was good, and only 59 down.
Right.
Right? So this gives you, this puts in perspective the Fabian hit job.
Right.
Where I forget how many views it was, but it was a large number of
Well, it was 14,000 views with 1,100 thumbs down. And the thing is, it's totally implausible that that would happen organically, but also once it starts to accumulate those thumbs down, it affects how the thing is appearing in searches, so less people see it, and it is effective at diminishing the reach, a persistent goal of those that are working against Crowdsource the Truth. And of course, we had a person who I consider unreliable, so people should take this information with a grain of salt, but he did an expose on a group called Shadowbox, which he said specializes in this type of, purchasing of thumbs down and doing various things with YouTube accounts and Twitter accounts that aren't real to try to craft a false sense of consensus, and it's really idiotic. And I talk about it not to feed the trolls, but because we need to take this power away from them. These guys are operating in this gray area that maybe is illegal, maybe is not illegal, maybe it's illegal but nobody wants to enforce it. So the only thing that we can do is to point it out so that it loses effectiveness, and that's my goal there.
But hats off to you, Jason, on arranging all this, doing all these great videos, and really appreciate the chance to inform the audience, or at least try to inform the audience with your great help.
Well, thank you, Charles. And of course, people can find loads more information about you and keep up with all the things that you're researching and tweeting about. If they go on to Twitter, they can follow you right there at Charles Ortel. And of course, you've got charlesortel.com, Roseanne Barr following you there. That's very good. A lot of people. And interesting tweets, including the bombshell about the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein being an FBI informant. It seems like no depth too low for Robert Mueller's FBI.
Well, as a guess, I mean, the whole Epstein story that the FBI just, I think, Thursday or Friday put on the famous vault, 8 different files. I only looked at 2 of them. There's a lot of stuff in there. 2 or 3 of them, but some of the stuff, a lot is redacted and missing of what the FBI was looking at with regard to Epstein. And as a guess, I mean, the whole arrangement of Epstein having an island in St. Thomas and a fancy place in Florida and New York and New Mexico and all that kind of stuff, that was most likely a honeypot. I mean, it was all set up to entrap a lot of people. And once they got Epstein on the charges, as a guest, they turned the screws up on him and said, listen, you're going to have to tell us, if you want to avoid going to prison for a long time, you've got to give us what you really know here. And one wonders how much of that dirt made it into the FBI files and how much of that dirt maybe was sent off to the side, either by
personal file for Robert Mueller,
or dirty people working with Robert Mueller. We don't yet know that it's Mueller himself. But I would, given what we know about the certain top people on this episode, vis-a-vis going after Trump and going after Hillary Clinton, we know that there are dirty people at the top of the FBI and the very highest levels of the FBI, including McCabe
Right.
who was fired, and how many other people like Comey and others.
Mueller.
And we know that Mueller was head of the FBI for 12 years, and there are arguments that under Mueller's reign of terror, followed by Comey's reign of terror, a lot of damage was done to the FBI, inserting senior people in who frustrate the daily great efforts of the line people. So,
right. Now, Charles, there's a lot of people who have said, and I mean, this is independent reporting. I don't know if it's accurate or not. A lot of people have said that Jeffrey Epstein is a Mossad agent and that this pedophile island is a Mossad operation. But I've found there's a lot of people on the internet who just blame everything on Mossad without necessarily having any evidence. I, of course, have been accused of being a Mossad agent, but no one's presented any evidence of that because it's totally untrue.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I would say that Jeffrey Epstein's life story makes no sense to me.
How so?
Having been to a competitive school, Horace Mann.
Where did he go, Dalton?
It's not that he went to Dalton. He went to some high school in Long Island, I think. He supposedly was smart. He supposedly never went, I forget if he went to college, or I don't think he was graduated from college, but somehow he ended up being a math tutor for kids at Dalton.
Right.
And then from that, he went on the, quote, taught at Dalton, which I don't believe. I know that New York public schools, for example, require you to get a master's degree if you want to come in from the outside. Because my ex-wife did it, my mother did it.
And Dalton is super fancy, right?
Dalton is a school, we're the rival schools. We would say that it's a school for, very rich, dumb people.
Right.
What we would say.
And that's my experience too with people that I knew growing up who went there.
And Dalton kids would say Horace Mann is a school for very rich, smart kids, nerds, but whatever. But the notion that Dalton would have accepted somebody to teach there without a college degree, let alone advanced degrees in math, is unusual. The notion that he would then go to work at Bear Stearns, supposedly with no money, and become a billionaire trading does not make any sense to me, in as much as I don't think he was ever a partner at Bear Stearns, which is what you would have to be. And we talked about trading. You go from being a math tutor at Dalton School, that's not the logical track to being a razor sharp trader at one of the toughest trading shops before it went bankrupt.
It is weird.
Before it went nearly bankrupt. It was acquired by J.P. Morgan. So his life story to me does not make sense. But what he may have been involved with, he might have been a front for very rich people who said, look, all right, you're smart enough, you don't have the credentials, you can pretend you're a billionaire, why don't you take this capital and manage it and put it into all these real estate assets. You can go around, I don't mind you claiming it's your money, because I got so much money.
Why would they want to do that, though?
People like this. Some very rich people don't want the world to know how much money they actually have.
To give it to some schlub?
They don't give it to them. They let you say that it's your money, but it's not. When you look at the actual who's paying the bills or whatever, it's not his. So as a guess, that whole arrangement, particularly the St. Thomas Island,
that's got to cost a lot. How much do islands cost, Charles?
Well, it's really the cost of insuring and maintaining them that would be very high. But the point is, all of these suspect people, the Epstein Black Book, the people in it, the flying young, perhaps underage masseuses and other girls.
Well, they've admitted to him having underage, and there's some girl who was like the flight attendant or whatever, who gave a whole interview about it.
Right. Well, that's the ones we know about. So I'm just saying. So we don't know the whole story, and it's so far away. Again, it speaks to risk profile, right? What we can debate. I think what Epstein did is horrible. We don't know the full scope of what he did. We don't know what all the other visitors to Epstein's Island may have done. But when you just think about the Clintons, and Bill was a visitor supposedly, and is in the Black Book. It is alleged Hillary may also have been a visitor, although I haven't seen proof of that. It just speaks to risk profile. You're the former president of the United States, and you're going to pay a visit to Epstein Island.
Yeah, very.
In September of 2002, you're going to say, "Oh, Jeff, why don't I take your plane and we'll get Epstein and who are the other people, the actors who went with him around?"
Kevin Spacey was on there.
Yeah, he didn't get into any trouble, did he?
Didn't he though? He was fired from some show for.
Isn't he Me Too problem?
Some actor accused him of sexual assault, and then he was fired from House of Cards, but I don't know that there's been any charges. Just a quick aside, Charles, I'd be very quick. We've got Rise Above in the Periscope comments saying that they never heard of Mossad until Crowdsource the Truth was accused of being Mossad. And also, we've got Hannah Skoll telling us that GHWB was rushed to the hospital, and here we go.
Oh, well, he's
pretty
there.
darn old, but it's a shame if he's not going to be prosecuted.
Yeah, yeah. He's that's a story that deserves its whole other show. You know, going way back into the Bush family. It's something we will do.
Yeah.
So why don't we get into the guts of the presentation?
Yes.
If we can pull up that first Twitter thread.
Sure.
It's very lengthy.
This one.
Yeah. And this Rex Vatchel Lindsay, whoever that is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. This is a really good thread. That was basically saying that Obama himself authorized the use of surveillance on Team Trump. And you go through it. It's very, very long. And it provides links to the statute, et cetera. But the summary that I remember is that in order to do the type of electronic surveillance that's called for, A, Obama would have had to personally sign off on it, and B, Loretta Lynch would have had to sign off on it as well. And that to me seems enormously likely and fertile ground.
And problematic.
Exactly, and it would explain why so many different people are jumping on hoops trying to not study this, not provide the information that people need.
Right.
So,
very interesting.
I don't know if we could go into the, yeah. So the real question here is, it's the old Nixon question. You know, what did the president know, and when did he know it? And we don't have to pull up the next link unless you want to.
I love pulling up links, Charles.
All right, there you go.
But you know, it's funny. They really went right to that Watergate language. Like I'm talking about, like the Jake Tappers and the Anderson Coopers were saying that phrase like right from the beginning because they wanted to conflate this with Watergate and try to, you know, Nixon went out, so they were thinking Trump would go out, and they would just call it Watergate too and blame it on Trump. But it's totally blowing up in their face.
It is totally blowing up in their face. And in this case, you know, I think we're going to find out that that Obama and Jarrett, I actually believe that it's more likely Jarrett who was leading the charge, that Obama was smart enough to have, you know, at least one link, you know, one separation from him and the
degree of separation.
But the mastermind, the quote evil mastermind of all this, most likely was Valerie Jarrett, and Eric Holder before Loretta Lynch replaced Holder.
Don't like him.
And so they had a lot invested in this process over the course of 8 years. By the time 2015-16 rolled around, you know, they needed to make damn sure. What is it? It's motive, means, and opportunity. They had a clear motive.
Yeah.
Right? They had absolute means.
Yeah.
And ample opportunity to do just what it looks like actually did happen in 2015-16, and that is, you know, they may not have liked the Clintons, and Barack Obama was no George Washington.
I like this photograph, how they're juxtaposed like that, and Washington is sort of like, oh boy, out of focus back there.
Yeah, and it's unfair to say this about Barack Obama, because I think he does tell the truth from time to time, but George Washington could never tell a lie, and the Clintons could never tell the truth.
That's true.
You know.
That might be an anecdote about George Washington, but he's a good guy.
Yeah. So this is another good link here, the third one. They're all good, but this is a particularly good one.
These are the links that keep on giving. Wait a minute.
Not
Did
that
I just
one.
close the wrong one? Is that
This,
it?
yeah, this one. So we can't reveal where we did this, Jason, but you and I might have been at a gathering about a week ago where people might have asked, how would we know things are moving in the right direction? And one of us might have said, when a Democrat stands up and says, you know, hang on here, you know, this isn't going, this scares me a little bit. This is now the second significant Democrat. A more important one was Mark Penn, who on Monday of last week stood up and wrote a great column in The Hill, which is getting a tremendous amount of publicity, for which he's being attacked, saying, listen, this Mueller thing, now that we seem to know what really was happening, this is diabolical, and it sets a horrible precedent for weaponizing the state, the apparatus of state, against political opponents. And as you and I have been saying for months now, with Mueller, the issue is not only his highly questionable history alongside Comey and Rosenstein. They called him Romanstein. Failing to catch obvious frauds that would have implicated and ideally convicted the Clintons. Not only are there those problems, but when you're talking about potentially removing, via impeachment or otherwise, Donald J. Trump in a historically unprecedented manner, scant months into his presidency, you better do that. If you're going down the track, you better do that with great care so that nobody can attack after the fact the decision for being improper,
right,
for being politically skewed, which is why I personally have taken the tack I've taken on the Clinton foundations. Now it's over 3 years of work, painstaking work, going back over the ground, making sure that anything that I'm saying is defended by evidence and supporting evidence. That's the approach that the Democrats and the apparatus of state should have taken had they been sure, or had they found probable cause to suspect that Donald Trump had conspired, forget collusion because that's not a crime, conspired, and his people conspired to with a foreign government to install him as president. Had they seen that, they should have taken due care, but they didn't. Instead, they stacked it. They got 13, fiercely partisan, Democratic, Trump-hating, Republican-hating, and frankly, fraudsters, in the case of Weissman and others, unconvicted fraudsters, to stack the deck here. And so this is interesting now, seeing a second Democrat. So I don't know this particular person, but...
Well, Periscope is calling for military televised tribunals trying these criminals for treason at the foot of the Capitol building. That would be interesting. We'll cover that for sure. Yeah.
So, and then this one here is another great Wall Street Journal piece. I don't know if it's by the editorial board or not. And Kimberly Strassel, who's fantastic, on the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal is interesting. It's kind of schizophrenic. It's part of the Murdoch empire. And sometimes they're not tough enough, and sometimes they're super tough. And now Kimberly Strassel, who is an award-winning, great writer, gifted investigative journalist, saying, look, what Rosenstein in particular is doing here is so outrageous. I mean, if you hear all these legal experts, Larry Tribe and others, who's embarrassed himself, the constitutional scholar at Harvard, who doesn't seem to understand what a constitution actually is, that it's the U.S. Constitution we're talking about here, Larry. Here you have Rosenstein, and we still don't know who pushed for Rosenstein, who argued to Trump and Sessions, Rosenstein should be the number 2 person. Why did Sessions why wasn't he honest in the confirmation process, saying, look, if something comes up here alleging that there's going to be, Russian collusion, I have to recuse myself. Why wasn't he honest in the vetting process with the Trump team, talking about his strengths and weaknesses? And if he wasn't even asked about this, why did nobody ask him about this stuff? Remember, I said lawyers are supposed to be risk averse and cautious and thinking about what could go possibly wrong. Here we have Gumby or Opie Sessions, who is a disgrace, I think. It's the last person I have any confidence in at this stage. And don't tell me he's got like this incredibly convoluted plan that he's going to look like an idiot so people will underestimate him, and then in the end he's going to win. No, he looks like an idiot. And gets this guy Rosenstein, who is unbelievably conflicted in my mind, looking at his record, known facts. Rosenstein is doing his level best to push this inquiry past the election season of 2018.
Right. And
he's withholding and delaying and denying and obfuscating and threatening people. You know, he threatened people recently. I mean, he needs to be, Donald Trump needs to drum Rosenstein out. And it's not enough to get him off the process. Then when the second special prosecutor,
well, he needs to be charged. He can't go get some $1 million job at a law firm or on CNN or whatever.
Right, he needs to be investigated, and then if an indictment is warranted, it needs to be brought, and then it needs to be brought to trial, and then the prosecution needs to do its level best to convict him. Right. And if he's convicted, he needs to go to prison for a long time.
Yeah, I'm with that, for sure.
So if we go back into the El Slidos, yeah, so on Hillary,
Captain Pike.
Captain Pike. You know, it's been pretty, today it's cold and wet, but the last several days when Hillary was out, you know, addressing the Yale class, and then more recently up at Harvard, she wears these kooky clothes, these kooky outfits, and she was wearing a very heavy winter coat, or heavy coat anyway, up at Harvard. And I remember I was struck both at it's a long time ago, 40 years ago at my Yale graduation, 38 years ago at Harvard. I still remember how hot it was when you're wearing a black robe, you know, covering your body, and it's 90 degrees outside. You are damn hot. Why is she wearing these heavy clothes and these scarves? There's just something really odd about it.
No blood in her body. She must be cold.
And I don't, even as much as I look at this back, what's going on back there?
Well, I mean, remember, she's just a head stuck on a box.
Right, so but what is that thing?
This is the back brace or something that this is what inspired the Captain Pike drawing, because someone had this, and then she's always having these huge scarves since this was noticed. So, I don't know. I mean, she's fallen a lot and everything, and I mean, there's no shame in being injured. She's, you know, getting on in the years, but she's trying to hide it because, as you said, they just can't be truthful about anything.
Right, and you know, here we have this whole issue about unemployment in this country and work, etc. There is a school of thought in France that if you're above a certain age and still working, you're stealing work from the younger generation. She's at least 70. She might be 70, almost 71 at this point. Why, you know, soon I'll be, you know, a number of years I'll be of that age, and maybe I'll still want to work, although if I can work, I probably will. Mm-hmm. But, you know, where is it written that a two-time loser should automatically be, you know, consider it's right to be a three-time loser? I mean, you know, there's a big crowd of Democrats out there, other than dopey Joe Biden and, you know, Bonzo Bernie and and Pelosi and these people who are, I think Bernie's almost, what is he now, 77?
75 maybe?
And Pelosi's, I think, 77, and Biden's in his 70s, and Elizabeth Warren is getting up there. And, you know, why should that crowd feel entitled at this stage to dominate contention for the Democratic Party nomination for president?
Well, Hillary's actually generating jobs because she needs a crew of people to keep her alive and moving. She's like a giant Disney animatronic. Yeah,
and so here at Chelsea, we mentioned it briefly in the Guardian piece, but here's another piece in The Hill. Trump degrades what it means to be an American. Really? I mean, I remember as much as I was not pleased when Barack Obama won, because I felt that he had zero by way of credentials to do anything positive with the economy. Had nothing to do with race, nothing even to do with his politics. It was more that what I saw in the way of a crisis back then was not something that Barack Obama's instincts would naturally address for the benefit of America. And sure, you know, here we have the Democrats kvetching about, you know, Donald Trump spending $1.8 billion on a wall, when under Barack Obama they added $10 trillion to the national debt.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot. Now, so here Chelsea Clinton is giving a lecture to the rest of the world based on her considerable lack of experience and expertise that Donald Trump doesn't understand what it means to be an American.
That's just stupid.
Yeah, and you know, if you want to say that in your person, she should be forced to say, I'm saying this in my personal capacity, not, you know, for addressing you from the Clinton Foundation from my role as vice chairman and one of two controlling Class A directors of a foundation, that I got to be this role only because I happened to be the only child of the Clintons. You shouldn't.
Well, one Clinton and Buell Hubble.
I'm not going there. I'm not going there yet. But and of course they run this in The Guardian. The Guardian is a Clinton-loving, left-of-center English publication.
And they're talking about freedom of speech on the same weekend where Tommy Robinson has been thrown in jail for simply pointing a camera at a trial of these pedophile groomers.
Well, and look at this sentence. I mean, people, I'm sure that if one were to do a transcript of our dialogue on all these shows, that I will make grammatical errors. But look at this. Well, freedom of speech doesn't mean there is freedom of consequences.
Freedom from consequences?
Yeah, I mean, huh?
She's a PhD.
Yeah, right, a FUD.
Well, I'm not a huge Chelsea Clinton fan, to say the least, and I mean, why anybody cares about what she's saying. Where is that New York office? It's not 77 Water anymore.
I think the current office is at 1633 Broadway. I'm not really sure where that is.
1633 Broadway, I've been there.
Is it 42nd Street or so?
Let's find that real quickly. Where's Google Earth? Well, sorry, you keep going, Charles, and I'll find that and we'll take a look at it.
Well, if you could just go back to it for a second, just so I want to continue to read this. I mean,
yeah.
I think and she said that the U.S. has to find a way to return to decency. I think we will still then have work to do on repairing the tone in our country. The exposure of the real racist and sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, and anti-Semitic feeling, which is in the rise in our country, a rot that has been exposed. Where does she get this?
Well, I mean, is her father considered sexist for raping women? I don't know.
It doesn't really make sense.
No.
So we have finally a story, switching gears a little bit, because we always like to talk both about political stuff and economic stuff. We have signs actually that the European Union.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. This is Paramount Plaza, 1633 Broadway.
Oh, is that all the way up on, where is that?
It's just outside of Times Square. It's like right across the street from, they used to have Cats playing over here forever.
Oh, near the Winter Garden.
Yeah.
School of Rock.
Right.
School of Fraud.
Exactly. Why'd they get rid of Cats? Anyway, sorry, I digress.
That's all right. So if we could pull up this zero hedge piece, there are a few zero hedge pieces.
That one?
There's a school of thought now that because Italy is wrestling now with a new government, and the Spanish government is now under threat, and I think the Italian government is talking about maybe the new government wanting to cancel some of the debt that was created in this whole crisis, that we could now be entering a period of intense volatility where indeed the euro may go the way of other past Confederation currencies. And I think that's a very significant set of developments. We've taken for granted the idea that the European fiction, euro fiction, could work. And I don't think it really does work. And this notion that in the United States on the key 10-year bond, which is Treasury bond issued by our government, we're paying 3% on it, that European governments could issue a bond for that length of time and have negative interest or very low interest doesn't make any sense.
Why would anyone want something with negative interest? Who would buy that?
Well, if you've got so much money, if you've got no sensible person would do that. But if you're sitting there and you're trying to manipulate the economy,
but why not just give it away if you have something? You're buying something that's telling you it's going to lose money.
Right, exactly. Well, so this was the euro policy about in order to try to pump prime the European economy. They brought interest rates lower and lower and lower under a theory that by depressing interest rates, that would cause people, rather than holding on to their money, to spend it. That was the theory. That theory did not work.
Because most people don't even know that's happening, or
well,
why did that not
the
work?
the real is a bit of a digression, but the real reason I think is that the populations in Europe are so radically much older than the U.S. population that on average you've got in Italy and Spain, I think you've got populations whose average age is like 43 years, which is very high. Ours is like 35 or something like that. You start pushing the average age of the population up that high, what it means is that the buying preferences of the population have changed. If you're 65 years old or 55 years old or 75 years old, you are not, generally speaking, going out and buying a beach house and a ski house and blowing money on clothes and whatever. You're concerned. You want to make sure you have enough money for your retirement, your end days. And so your buying patterns change. So lowering interest rates is not going to spur consumer activity, and creating a giant European-wide welfare state on top of national welfare states that are already far bigger than the United States didn't make any sense. So I think there's finally going to be a day of reckoning that's at hand now. It's past being at hand. We're going to see it play out as the U.S. becomes a place where it makes a lot of sense to invest because of a deep consumer market, because of low tax rates, because of diminished regulation, because of a certainty that if you take euros and you put them into the United States, changing them for dollars, you can sell those dollars, you can sell your investment in dollars, change it back into whatever you want. There's going to be, I think, more and more interest in sending capital into this country, particularly as Jay Powell at the Fed has been successful in raising these benchmark interest rates well above where they were under the long 8 years that Obama was president, without causing a crash as yet.
So you think the euro is going to crash?
Crash. I think it would not surprise me to see the euro splinter.
What does that mean?
In other words, no longer have pan-European group is like 29 countries from memory, roughly 30 countries. There are 5 big ones and a whole bunch of small ones.
Right.
And you're already seeing, some of the smaller countries saying, I don't want this. And some of the bigger countries, like Germany, plunging off into the abyss because they need, Germany's path to salvation was to be the biggest dog in the euro, and then to argue that the euro will stay intact, therefore the euro has international relevance, therefore Germany has political power on the global scene. That was the theory. Euro breaks apart, Germany's just it's a big country, but it's a failing country. It's not a growth country. It's got all kinds of problems.
We can start moving those schnitzels, Charles.
And we're seeing, just to go right into this zero hedge piece, second zero hedge piece, we're seeing that the Saudi Arabians are looking at this and saying, you know what, we really don't like Iran at all. And the fact that you guys are promoting this Iran deal is kind of, goading us off. I would say cheesing us off, but use some other adjective. And you're going to have to choose between doing business in Saudi Arabia and having our money and doing business in Iran. And again, I look at the theory of why the U.S. should like Iran and the reality of the mullahs, and I say, to Germany, to France, to England, to Italy, you're going to have a clear choice here going forward. Do you want to do business inside the United States on a preferred basis, or do you want to abandon us to support, with your business activities, the largest known state sponsor of terrorism around the world, after Donald Trump has put you on notice and saying, you're not meeting your fair share of defense spending in NATO. We think it's very important. Our security services do, under Trump, know what's going on. Saudi Arabia, which is a rival, a fierce rival enemy of Iran, has told us A, B, and C about what Iran's actually been doing. We're telling you that we're going to stamp this stuff out, and we are going to push for regime change in Iran. If you want to support Iran, you understand you're a hairbreadth away from being an enemy of this country, and you really want to go there.
I think, Charles, there is a fairly reasonable argument for Germany not being able to make their financial contributions to NATO because Merkel is obviously blowing the budget in the Hillary Clinton section of Walmart.
On food.
No, the outfit, I'm saying.
Right.
But anyway.
She's not wearing a headdress, I notice. But anyway.
She should, that's true. But she should also have a scarf to hold her head on.
The other thing that's really interesting is that the North Korean situation, it was so funny watching rat catcher descendant Chuck Schumer and the others in the lamestream press immediately jump all over Donald Trump for telling the North Koreans, look, we're not going to have a meeting,
Right.
calling off the summit on Saturday.
But it worked.
Yeah, so far it seems to have worked. On Saturday, there was another meeting between North and South, Saturday morning.
I mean, this is an amazingly significant photograph. These two leaders meeting with smiles on their face is something that I think most people never thought we would see, particularly not under a Donald Trump presidency, right?
Right.
And
so
they didn't even have to get Dennis Rodman involved, which I'm a little bit disappointed
or
about.
send James Taylor over there to sing, you got a friend,
Right.
the way they did after the Charlie Hebdo thing. That worked well.
Did they do that?
Yeah, they sent James Taylor over to sing "You've Got a Friend." That was compelling.
Hard to believe he's still alive.
Anyway, so we'll see. There are many steps between here and success on the North Korean thing, but you got to give Donald Trump and his team major league chops,
Yeah.
because he is looking at these long, festering, unsolved crises and saying, "Look, we're not in the problem business, the misery business in this country. Here's a problem. Every problem, there are two problems that can't be solved, supposedly death and taxes, but every other problem can be solved. And so let's solve this problem." And Trump's trying to do it. And anytime there's a problem, it does seem to me as if Democrats and the lamestream media are rooting for Donald Trump to fail,
Right.
even if failure means it harms the American people. And the
Yeah.
American people are not stupid. They see this and they say, look, I don't want to be in the party of losers, which is what the Democrats seem to be.
I think it's very interesting that Kim is looking very happy in these photographs.
Yeah.
So obviously, wanting to make some kind of a deal. So hopefully that will happen.
Well, I think, assuming the deal happens, he's the big winner in it.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard for a long time that North Korea has rich mineral resources, and obviously we know that my time in Korea, I spoke to a number of South Korean people who had relatives in North Korea. South Korea is like, I think this is approximately correct, it's about the size of New Jersey, and they produce like every television, half the automobiles in the world. So it's a very hardworking people, and focused on education and all that. So I mean, if you could unify North and South Korea, North Korea could quickly become an economic powerhouse.
Right. Which would be good for them.
Yeah, it seems like it. Buy some potatoes and stuff.
So separately, the situation in Brazil
Oy.
is not good.
No.
And one of my grandmothers was from Brazil, and I've been going there since 1985.
Wasn't Brazil a military dictatorship until 1984?
Yeah, it's about when I waited.
Until it ended.
No, I'm teasing, but it just happened. That's when I went for the first time. And
But it had ended when you went there? Or
but it was in turmoil.
Right.
And I think it was 80. I might have those years wrong. I might have gone actually in 83. But it's a mess. The truckers are have struck, and that's a big problem because the food supply, the distribution of food inside Brazil is
Peter Strzok?
is hostage to the truckers, not the Struckers. And so this is a bad situation. When we think about the glory days of emerging markets, there was a theory, forget America, North America, it's got all kinds of problems, forget Europe. Growth is going to be in China, India, Brazil, and Russia. And now we have Russia under sanction, India in fraud turmoil, China, I think, close to blowing up as a bubble, and Brazil, obviously, in great trouble. All of which, again, continues to argue for investing in the United States. That if you're looking for relative tranquility and great opportunity,
Right.
as contrasted to the euro maybe blowing up,
The BRICS
the BRICS
crumbling.
this is actually this kind of turmoil. It's not good for the people of Brazil, obviously, but it is good for America's position relative to these other options if you're thinking like an investor. So, and this latest thing in Venezuela, I suspect this news that you clicked there at the very bottom, not only does this American get out of Venezuela
Oh, yeah.
to be greeted by first Orrin Hatch, but actually Donald Trump quickly welcomed him, which I think is fantastic. And I wonder and believe possibly that there is a back channel that Venezuela is looking at this and saying, you know, if North Korea can come in from the wilderness,
Right.
you know, North Korea is a long way away from the United States. It may be close to Sarah Palin, you know, in Alaska, but it's very far away from most of us on the East Coast. On the other hand, Venezuela was, when I started out work in the early 80s, Venezuela was a prosperous country.
Right.
We have had in the past in this country excellent relations with Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela has gone down a descent to hell. It finds itself in hell now with inflation that doesn't make any sense.
Food strikes and all kinds of stuff.
And here you have...
well, I found it interesting. Orrin Hatch was extremely complimentary of President Trump at the little meeting in the Oval Office. He called him boy at one point, which I found a little odd.
Yeah.
And Trump kind of cut him off when he said that, but it was an interesting interaction. And I mean, I guess Orrin Hatch is kind of like older than Trump. How old is Orrin Hatch?
Yeah, he's pushing 80.
Right. Oh, he's got to be over 80 now.
I don't know.
Well, but it was an interesting interaction between Senator
80
Hatch
is the new 50.
Right.
One hopes.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a good development. So we're going to rip through the next page quickly because a lot of it we've been through before. But when we think about SPYGATE,
Right.
I would encourage our Crowdsource of Truth viewers to share with your friends and understand that SPYGATE is not simply around just about 2015-16. It goes back to this meeting on the 5th. We don't need to pull these links up for the interest of time.
Sure.
On the 5th of June, that was indeed when Obama and Hillary met in Feinstein's Washington, one of her mansions in Washington, D.C.
Crazy.
Then, and as a guess, that was one of the first few meetings where the boundaries of any kind of détente between Team Clinton and Team Obama were beginning to be laid out. And I think over the summer months, those boundaries were memorialized one way or another in a deal where we see it in this ridiculous memorandum of understanding. We've had it up many times before. People want to read it for the first time. This is the version that came out on December 3rd, 2013 in production, sought by Judicial Watch and a Freedom of Information Act request. It shows that Valerie Jarrett signed this memorandum of understanding around 2 weeks after the election. So how could she possibly have studied the Clinton Foundation in any kind of depth? They didn't even file their filings by 16 November 2008 for 2007. They delayed them until December and January. So she couldn't possibly have known the true state of the Clinton Foundation. Then we learn in this great FBI vault thing, we've had it up before, that it's by March of 2009, at a date I'm not certain of it yet, March 2009, that's when she begins using a new private server for all of her Secretary of State business, using a number of email addresses. But there's, in this green, we have a new bombshell. And here I do want to hit, if you can, Jason,
Sure.
this Gateway Pundit thing, the link.
Boop, 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 boop. I think it's this.
Yeah. If we go down this page a little bit,
Jay Sekulow.
yeah, has apparently gotten,
He's quite good. He looks very official on camera.
if we hit this document link, okay, this is 339 pages of documents. And you'll see the first one here is from, if we go Friday, February 6th. So it's before March.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's before the previous emails that
From Aberdeen.
that had been turned over December 5th, 2014. So we don't yet know how many of the 30,000 emails are new and how many may be duplicative. But when I just scanned through, and we're not going to do it now, the 339 pages, I found instance after instance of Doug Band, who was not in the State Department, no security clearance, basically reaching in to Huma Abedin and others in the State Department to get favorable treatment on behalf of Clinton Foundation donors. This is stuff, a pattern that you see starting early in her role as Secretary of State, And then there's this pivotal period, June 2012 until early 2013, when Huma Abedin is simultaneously being paid by the Clinton Foundation, by the Secretary of State's Department, by Hillary Clinton,
Teneo.
and by Teneo, all 4 paychecks. And nobody yet in the lamestream press has been able to say, this does sound a little bit like a pay-for-play thing.
It's good work if you can get it, Charles.
Right, but so 30,000 new emails establishing a pattern of practice of monetizing the Secretary of State role for the benefit of Clinton Foundation donors, maybe Teneo clients, and the Clintons personally. This is something that needs to be seen in great depth. And now we understand, with Clintons, whenever there's something missing, the billing records.
Yeah, it's important.
It's important. And they try to wait until the statute of limitations has passed. And then out come, the key pieces of information. And then the debate, the excuse the Clintons always use when you talk about, that's old news. We covered
Exactly.
it, right?
Right-wing conspiracy.
Right, so that...
But the content of this message is kind of interesting. I don't know who Christina Ho is, but she's talking about resumes for friends, and it's all cutesy with exclamation points and everything. I mean...
Yeah, it's a standard approach. I mean, there's email and after email here, so far produced, that shows...
kind offer to help look into the process at the State Department.
Right, and look, this kind of stuff does happen in government. One candidate wins, a loyal supporter then gets preferred access, not typically for political jobs. For top jobs where you're supposed to have credentials, generally that doesn't happen. But here I think we're going to see, and these are only 339 pages so far. When we get a chance to look at, say, 10,000 pages out of a third out of the 30,000, we're going to see, I think, that this was basically a cash for favor exercise, monetized and run through the Clinton Foundation.
Well, I mean, this seems to be quite clearly coming from Huma. I don't even understand how they're doing this redacting, because right here it says it's to Abedin HM, and also Huma Abedin right there.
That's her personal address.
Right, so it's going to both this probably says clintonemail.com into the redacted, but then they redact who the response is from, this cheers right here, and she's saying she's been getting a lot of encouragement from many Hillary supporters to help look, to consider pursuing a position at state, given her background and experience. This probably says as a Saudi intelligence operative underneath here.
I don't know, Jason, if you can get us to page 82 or 89 of this. From memory.
Are they numbered?
It'll be at the top, like if you...
Oh, right.
That's 16, so if we can get to 82, or it's either 82 or 89, it's pretty funny.
Oop, that's annoying that it does that, but okay, we're 82.
Let's see, 82. Is that 82? Yeah. No, 89 then.
Okay. It's Doug Band, Huma Abedin, all the best.
William J. Clinton and I think it is a great idea and have been discussing it with Sid.
Got to be Sidney Blumenthal.
Right. This is Northern Ireland. Bill Clinton and Sidney Blumenthal are supposed to have, he was persona non grata under
who was?
Sidney Blumenthal.
Oh, at the State Department.
Well, Obama said you can't, I mean, people said we don't want him anywhere near the State Department.
Super sketchy.
And here we have, and I don't know who CC is H2. Here you have Hillary, and H2 maybe is her second email address.
Gotta be, right? H2.
But I mean, this is the kind of stuff that really needs to be dissected here. And I think if we go down it, it's talking about in the August 2009 timeframe. Yeah, Sean Woodward suggested a panel at CGI. Okay, this is August 9th, 2009.
Is Sean Woodward related to Bob Woodward?
No, UK Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. A panel at Clinton Global Initiative. Well, the Clinton Global Initiative wasn't created, the new one, until September 4th, 2009. Unless you're doing time phone hacking.
Yes.
You know, you're going back in time here. And they didn't even bother to advertise, to apply for federal tax exemption for the Clinton Global Initiative until August of 2010. So, this is the kind of stuff where we're going to have to laboriously go through all of these emails and see how many of them were memorialized traffic designed to get favors, to enhance the prestige, to confer advantages upon donors to the Clinton Foundation or its various initiatives, all of which activity is what's called either private gain, illegal private gain, or illegal inurement if it involves a trustee or a director of any Clinton initiative. So, I think what Sekulow has gotten here is a gold mine or a platinum mine. And this has been, as I say if we go back to the slide, this is a bombshell development that was underreported. Okay?
And of course, Sidney Blumenthal is like as sketchy as they get.
Right. We talked here I just mentioned that they don't start reorganizing the Clinton Foundation until the 4th of September. But this is done, all the reorganizing of the Clinton Foundation is done right under Robert Mueller's nose as head of the FBI. All these illegal acts, creating new, in theory, entities, Clinton Global, Clinton Health, Alliance for a Healthier Generation, and then Clinton Bush Haiti and C40, and all these things were illegally organized and operated, and yet Robert Mueller, who was very briefed on the Clinton Foundation, and maybe he's just got a bad memory, but he's briefed on the Clinton Foundation in 2002, when he was head of the FBI. There's a problem back then. You would have thought, Clinton Foundation, there's a problem again. I better do something about it.
Well, the question becomes, is it under his nose or is it under his supervision?
Well, something like this, a politically sensitive case, which is, we had the guidelines, the operating guideline book, handbook that we put on the 698-page thing.
The FBI one.
It goes right to the head of the FBI. There's something this sensitive. Former president, aspiring president, Secretary of State. Come on.
Well, that's what I mean. He must have known, and he must have been complicit.
Right. So then we have this mysterious money man, Mr. Dennis Chang, and note to the FBI, note to the people who vet people. How in the hell did Dennis Chang go from being a high school student, I think in Hong Kong, to Swarthmore, to London School of Economics, to scant credentials, to suddenly pulling in all kinds of money for Hillary's Senate campaign, her re-election campaign, her presidential campaign? How did he get to be deputy protocol chief, the second highest person in charge of protocol, directing traffic for foreigners coming inside this country, deciding which Americans get to go on foreign trips with Hillary Clinton? How did he do all that? How did he then move in July of 2011 to the 77 Water Street, undeclared office, illegal to do so under New York law? How did he do this?
I thought he just super liked the London School of Economics on LinkedIn.
That's what he did. And then, how by the 2nd of November 2013 did nobody in the IRS notice that Hillary Clinton and Chelsea and Bill illegally took control of the main Clinton entity, Bill, Hillary, Chelsea Clinton Foundation, and by that means the entire network of affiliates? How come nobody noticed that?
Yeah.
How come nobody made a stink on the 5th of December 2014 that Hillary's lawyers turned in 33,490 emails that were supposedly either work-related or potentially work-related? Did anybody stop to think, actually, these emails were created beginning January 20th, 2009, which means that in the worst case, that they've been hanging on to these emails for like 5 years, right? Outside the custody and control of the U.S. government. Well, outside the custody and control of the U.S. government. These are federal records. Why did nobody complain? Why did nobody say, hey, how come there's no inspector general at the State Department who could have looked into this when Hillary was Secretary of State?
Well, it was for convenience.
And so we'll have a very simple test for the Horowitz report. If they don't address this, then we know that Horowitz has not done the correct job. But he's going to have to address this.
Didn't they say it was coming out this week or something?
They've been saying that for about the last...
Yeah, it's like having a kitchen remodeled or something.
That's right.
Every week.
Yeah. So the 2nd of March 2015 is when the Times reports that she's using had used a private email server.
That's surprising. Why would the New York Times report that? Is it like an internal war at the New York Times like there is at the FBI?
It could be that the elements at the Times wanted Bernie Sanders as opposed to Hillary. Could be. But it takes until, this should actually be July, 10th of July, 2015.
This one?
Yeah. They open into an investigation into Hillary's, it's my fault, Hillary's mishandling of classified information, and instead of calling it, an investigation, somehow they get together and say, we'll call it a matter. They use a code word, calling it mid-year exam.
Well,
to make it look benign.
Who's doing all that, isn't it?
Right, and this just reeks that elements within the FBI and the Department of Justice had decided, look, we can't let Hillary Clinton fail here. We just got to give the appearance of an investigation, run in place. We'll, burn our gears out. Nobody will know about it, and we'll destroy the files when Hillary gets to be President of the United States. Why would we do all this? Because we in the FBI, the senior people involved in this, and others who knew about it, would have goods over the President of the United States and Hillary.
Charles, Periscope was telling me that Doug Band just bought a $20 million Rockefeller mansion.
That's old news, yeah. The asking price was north of 30, but for some reason he was able to score David Rockefeller's fancy townhouse on 64th between Park and Madison, I think, for $20 million. Yeah, it's very suspicious.
Wow. Whoa. Yeah, why so much cheaper? That's...
Yeah. So this is interesting that in February of 2016, early in February, this veteran investigator, FBI agent, lead FBI agent, I think it's John Giacalone or something like that. He had been leading the investigation into Hillary's into the foundation aspects, I think, of it, and he just.
He resigned, right?
He resigned in February of 2016. And I believe that Trey Gowdy has got Giacalone and two others testifying before Congress in June, which should be very interesting if it's a public hearing.
That's been coming up a lot lately. When was it that he did that?
That he resigned?
Yeah.
He resigned, I believe, like February 1st or so, 2016. I wrote a story about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then by September 2016, the New York Police Department discovered this Wiener Aberdeen laptop with supposedly 650,000 potentially incriminating emails. Now, I hope that Horowitz is going over this trail carefully to understand why it took so long for the FBI to actually look at these emails, what was on this laptop, was it really studied carefully, who had custody and control over this and whatever else may have been found. Because remember, there was a case of an FBI person losing control of a laptop.
Well, it was like left in a motorcycle or something, and wasn't it?
So exactly. So this whole sloppiness needs to get looked at in great depth, and we're going to figure out soon. This is the good news.
What's up with the mishandling of evidence? Laurel Everly and I brought her laptop to the U.S. Capitol Police. They gave it right back to Imran Awan's lawyer. This laptop contains all this potentially damaging evidence. They leave it in a motorcycle. Don't they find evidence and lock it in a vault right away and not drive it all around in motorcycles and go to lunch and stuff like that?
So I think here we're learning the difference between what is on the books by way of laws or regulations
and what actually happens.
What actually could happen when you get crooks involved.
Right.
And if the deal is, if the word goes out and says, hey, look, there's an election coming up, actually not so much, we've rigged it, but when the new president, Hillary, gets in power for the first of her two terms before she decides she's going to be president for life, people who help her out here, do Hillary a solid, as they say, are going to be well looked after. And so, you end up taking an institution which arguably may have been corrupted under Mueller, beginning September 4th, 2000.
Well, he's perpetuating an ongoing
right.
decades of corruption.
Now that said, if we pull up the full this first Twitter thing, Donald Trump is now revving things up. Look at this tweet, 5:45 in the morning today.
Right. That's crazy. The
On
guy never
Sunday
sleeps.
morning. And he's really raising the temperature.
He's basically superhuman because, like, I've seen him eating Kentucky Fried Chicken and like Taco Bell bowls, but he's like 71 and he's up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He always looks,
He doesn't drink.
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. So that
But I mean, he
Kentucky
always looks
Fried
pretty
Chicken,
vital.
that
right?
Kentucky Fried Chicken is.
No, that's not good. He's got to cut that out. I was looking at a picture of him in profile yesterday. He should lose probably 50 pounds.
50.
I mean, he's pretty fat. He's got a lot of really nicely tailored suits that hide it. But I mean, he is in a high risk group for cardiovascular incidents, and we'd like him to, continue for his 8-year, 2-term presidency so that he can, denuclearize North Korea and open Trump hotels in Pyongyang, or however you pronounce that.
Pyongyang.
I think that'll happen.
Well, that's good. So you're speaking in your capacity as the son of a cardiologist,
Yes.
possibly.
Wait, what are you working for George now?
Sorry.
Anyway, good tweet from Donald Trump.
Yeah. So if we go back into the body,
Yeah.
so this is a pretty funny Zero Hedge piece that provides a dummy's guide to this Russian collusion hoax.
Russian Fallujah hoax.
Say that 6 times fast.
Okay. Is it a
But
video?
basically, we don't have to go into great depth. But what it sure looks as if,
Look at this crew.
motley crew, bunch of coneheads,
This guy looks dead already.
nasty. But what this team appears to have done is they most likely before the election, well before the election, they decided they needed an argument that they could employ to discredit Trump. And they put this, I believe history will show, and history better show, and I would encourage Donald Trump and his people to declassify as much of these documents as possible so the public can understand what happened. I believe that this team, either acting to save Obama and Clinton, or acting under the direct direction of Obama and Jarrett, decided that they were going to weaponize considerable state powers of technology and financial resources to manufacture a false narrative
Right.
and attempt to sell it to the gullible American public.
Right.
And then put in place, when Hillary didn't win, rapidly put into place the Mueller investigation, and have been keeping the Mueller investigation running. And I think this is something that deserves close scrutiny. This only came out yesterday at 10 in the evening.
Oh,
It
yeah.
already has 1,000 Facebook shares, or 1,000 shares, which is pretty impressive.
Not bad. Maybe it'll split and continue to go up.
And if we go back into the slides quickly,
One thing I want to add there, Charles, I'm sorry to distract, but I think it is even beyond the direction of Barack Obama. I think, as a guess, what happens in these situations is that the people that are involved at this high level know the game so well. They specifically, I think, avoid direct communications and instructions because those could implicate people. They just know what needs to be done, and there could be coded communications or unspoken communications or very indirect communications to other parties. So I guess plausible deniability is their most important thing. They all love to testify before Congress and talk about how they don't remember or didn't specifically do that one thing you're asking about.
well, if we think back to, I think you're right, except if we think back to the Strzok and Page texts,
That's just stupid.
and we think about alias emails, and we think about, Barack Obama likely having an alias email, and certainly Loretta Lynch had one, and Hillary Clinton had them, and Uma had maybe 50 emails. We get that from the Sekulow
Yep.
dump there, that Band is complaining that, apologizing that he didn't send the email to Uma's correct address or something like that.
This is obviously difficult to keep track of.
Because you have 50 of them,
Yeah.
what is in the text or whatever, something like that. So I think what we really need to have here, if we go to the third link, is we've got to have, in addition to criminal investigations, we need to have congressional inquiries. And I'm thinking back to my days watching, I was ill, and I had to stay home for a number of weeks during the Watergate hearings, so I watched them at a crucial point on television, and I really think, here's an article by Sean Davis in The Federalist, where he provides links to previous investigations about the degree to which the FBI has in the past gone way off the rails. And I don't buy this, I don't buy the argument that the end justifies the means, that you're going to say the FBI is, above reproach, and so anything they do to catch a killer or, criminal is okay. That's not what we signed up for here in this country, to live under our Constitution. And these red links here are examples of, very lengthy reports that document instances where our FBI may have gone way past the type of behavior that is appropriate in this country. And some of this happened, much of this happened when Robert Mueller was head of the FBI.
Crazy.
And so, the fact that he got a Purple Heart, one or more Purple Hearts, does not give him immunity from following the law.
Yeah.
Particularly as head of the FBI.
Definitely no. I mean, Memorial Day is coming up, and we've got tremendous respect for military veterans, including members of my family, but it definitely does not give the person a blank check to be a criminal for the rest of their lives. As a matter of fact, that's a particularly distasteful, disrespectful, it's a slap in the face to military veterans for a military veteran to be behaving in that way.
Right, needs to be called out and investigated. So then we go back in here, and we're almost, maybe a little bit over time, but we're almost done. If we go here, there are a large number, apparently, of FBI agents who want to come forward. They actually asked, we talked about this in Closing In last week, they came forward and they said, listen, please subpoena us. If you do that, then our legal fees are covered and we can sing like canaries. Oh. And I hope this will soon happen. I believe congressional testimony has been scheduled for sometime in June. And I hope Congress will look at this. I hope the hearings will be public. I hope that Donald Trump will declassify a lot of information so the hearings can be public. And I hope the public will be gripped and engaged by it. I hope that...
But wait, Charles, who's doing that subpoenaing? Mueller? No.
No. Congress could subpoena.
Congress, right.
So if Congress subpoenas these agents to talk...
Who gives them a lawyer then?
They're paid, apparently the procedures are they're paid for. And this guy, Jim Kallstrom, has been on Fox Business a lot.
Lionel knows Jim Kallstrom. This guy, okay, so Thomas Paine knows him as well. He was involved in the investigation of TWA 800 crashing.
We should get him on if we can get him.
Yeah.
So this could be a big event for June, and I'm hoping that the leaders of the House and the Senate say, you know what? We're not going to have summer vacation. We got the people's business has not been done. We're going to get it done. And put the heat. I hope they do that.
I think you're about as likely to see Congress not take a summer vacation as you are to see Hillary Clinton eating a taco bowl at Trump Tower with her head attached to a box.
It's funny that you should mention that. I was reading this morning to prepare for this. I happened to be reading Ed Klein's book Unlikable, in which it turns out that Ed Klein claims that Hillary Clinton was a frequent visitor to Trump Tower, availing herself of David Geffen's fancy apartment.
Really?
In Trump Tower, and that she really liked and was comfortable in Trump Tower. And she actually, according to Klein's book, requested of the management, this is obviously way back when, before Trump was even dreaming of running, requesting of management, could management make it possible for no peons to be in the elevator?
What?
Yeah, she could have her own private use of the elevator to go up to David Geffen's apartment.
Wow.
And Klein dryly writes that management turned her down. Well, management would no doubt be,
Donald Trump.
If he didn't do it himself, he'd hear about it, right?
That's so funny.
You can imagine that Donald Trump probably gets a report. You're not going to believe what Hillary Clinton asked for. Anyway, so on Mueller's true character, this Blaze article, your buddy Louis Gohmert, and I've met him once. He's actually a very impressive guy in person,
Yeah, nice
and
guy.
he is on a tear against Mueller.
Mm-hmm.
And Sidney Powell has written her book License to Lie. It's a fantastic book. We need to get her on. We haven't had Sidney on, have we?
No, but
Yeah.
we've spoken about it. I will say, Robert Mueller looks very tough. He photographs well he looks like a lawman, but I don't trust him at all.
I don't either.
He's got a chiseled jaw, He looks like he's going to kick somebody's ass.
Well, not Donald Trump, but John Kerry looks like a Secretary of State. In reality, he should be a pool boy. It's just,
He looks a little bit like a puppet head. I don't know. John Kerry, not that
or like
impressive.
Lurch.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
So Louis Gohmert, he's tearing up Mueller.
not a fan. Not a fan
of Mueller.
And
Right.
chapter and verse. He gave a long, impassioned 30-minute podcast, I think, interview where he went on and on and on with a bill of particulars against Robert Mueller.
And do you think that Gohmert will run for Senate?
No clue.
I seem to recall an offline conversation with him where he had some reason why he wasn't doing that.
Well, he's in a pretty powerful position in the House. He's a former, I think, Chief Justice of Texas. He's well liked, I believe, and he's effective as heck. So I hope he...
And friendly with Trump. He commented
Oh, yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So if we go back into the El Slidos, this is an interesting one. At first blush, I read this and I thought, what? Wayne Allen Root, I thought, who I've met and you need to meet. I mean, I've interviewed him several times. I read this, I said, my God, what has Trump done to piss off Wayne Allen Root? And in reality, this is an argument by Wayne that Obama should be impeached. And I had checked into this earlier, and it is the case that you can impeach an officer, a senior officer, a federal officer, after that person leaves office. It's a major league slap in the face, obviously, to do it. But here's Wayne Allen Root going for the jugular. He really doesn't like Obama, and he really doesn't like Lois Lerner, who persecuted him.
Wayne Allen Root announced the arrival of then candidate Trump at the rally I went to where I filmed Trump VR. So Wayne Allen Root, welcome to fabulous Trump Vegas. Wayne Allen Root is in that. So that was, I'm fixated on the photograph here and the body language. This to me looks like Barack Obama is saying, now listen, no parties while we're not home, and
Exactly.
Michelle is looking disgusted.
Exactly.
Did I turn the oven off?
That's right.
Don't look happy there at all, Charles.
Right. It's a nice picture, actually.
It is. It is. Wayne Allen
nice,
Root is good.
beautiful coat.
Yeah. Melania, very fashion forward.
So, I wrote this piece. We always do one shameless self-promotion.
I think these are among the best articles we show.
Oh, thank you. But I called out this Clinton Foundation. You can hit no thanks, you'll be fine.
It's not going away.
What are you?
No.
What's going on?
Sorry about that, Charles.
It's okay. So I called out this gala for being absurd. I mean, the Clinton
Right.
Foundation has not filed paperwork or has not amended its paperwork to correct materially misleading statements that had been in the public domain for years. And our laws in New York are very strict for any solicitation in excess of $25,000. And here they were trying to sell tickets. They may have sold tickets, $100,000 for a table. And yet all these filings are false and materially misleading, still out in the public domain. They're soliciting using the telephone, mails, across state lines. Of course, we have an acting attorney general, Barbara Underwood, I think is her name. She's
Underwater.
a Democrat. I mean, I guess she's not going to do anything. But it's just outrageous that they went ahead with this. And then what I was surprised to see is so far there's only stories, there's a Daily Mail story that kind of talks about what may have happened, but nobody's fessed up to where the venue was, who attended, how many people showed up, how much they raised. There's like been no real news on this.
I'm looking for that article right now. I had it up earlier and wanted to show it, that Daily Mail article.
If you Google it,
yeah, that's
you'll
what I'm
get
trying
to
to
it.
do. I'm on the Daily Mail here. World News, I suppose that would be.
But we're going to continue this campaign here against the Clinton Foundation and its filings until they actually correct the record.
Yeah, and you know, this article in the Daily Mail, I don't see, they don't have a search on here, but ISIS, Russia, Syria, they don't have the U.S. listed in World News. That's
If you just do a
US.
simple Google search last week on Clinton Foundation, you'll get to it. Just do Clinton Foundation Gala Daily Mail and you'll get to the story.
It reported that Sting was there. Here we go.
And
Yeah.
Shaggy.
Sting and Shaggy was there. Obviously, undoubtedly, Shaggy was singing your favorite anthem.
It wasn't me.
Right.
And here, look at this. This is only 1.2 thousand shares. So it gives you a sense.
I don't think this is the, yeah, this is
That's
the
it.
one that I saw.
This was the old article.
I'm sad. I like Sting. I don't know why he's helping the Clintons.
Yeah, I don't like him for that. But I think Shaggy is hysterical.
It says they have a new album coming out or something. Now we can see Hillary is still, this is her new thing, the scarves. She
good.
looks like she's got two different color eyes there. It's just a weird photo, I think.
It's Chardonnay talking.
But I read this article. It does not tell us where the venue is. This, you know, a lot of people sent me this invitation, which it doesn't, I mean, I guess you could just go to any restaurant in New York at 6 p.m. and expect them to be there, but it didn't tell you the venue. I don't know that you can tell from these photographs where it was.
Yeah, to me, I want to see a real report on what actually happened. We're not going to get it from Team Clinton. But
This is one of 18. Are we on somebody's Instagram now? No, this is still the Daily Mail. I don't know what we got there. Whoops. Very difficult to figure out exactly what happened, Charles. But Sting and Shaggy were rolling with the Clintons. I don't know.
Yep. So we'll maybe soon find out more.
Why are they being so secretive about it?
Because it's boldly against the law. So this is interesting here. I want to make a special appeal to people in New York in the media. We have now, Republicans have now made history by appointing, I think it's a, let's see if we get a picture here. Yeah, a black attorney general candidate to be Attorney General of New York, running in the election in November.
Good.
I think not just in the New York race, but in every race where an Attorney General is running for anything, or whether if they're running for higher office, or in every Attorney General's race come November, members of the public, members of the media need to ask the Attorney General, tweet to the Attorney General, write to the Attorney General, ask them in a debate, how is it that you're letting the Clinton Foundation off on the largest unprosecuted set of charity frauds in history? Why are you will you commit to the voters that if you're elected, you will actually open an investigation into state law violations of the Clinton Foundation in your state? That's something that the crowdsourcers, I call on you, please, if you have spare time, we need to go out around this country and ask every single Attorney General, why aren't you investigating and prosecuting the Clinton Foundation for state law violations when the IRS is investigating and has been investigating the Clinton Foundation, and there's reports that U.S. attorneys are actively working on investigations and indeed may even have grand juries impaneled to go after federal crimes. Why aren't the state attorney generals doing anything?
What is the candidate's name? Is it Wofford?
No.
Oh,
Well, it is Wofford, yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm trying to
In
see.
Wofford, yeah.
Ken? What's?
If you go back to the story, I think it gives his full name.
Yeah, because I wanted to help people find how we can tweet this at him, so maybe he will not
Upper
fail
right there.
to.
Yeah, it's let's see.
Wanna
Bit,
waffle
yeah, here we, a
something.
bit ahead. Yeah, it's Keith Wofford.
Keith Wofford. Let's see if we can find him on Twitter. But maybe people could bring Sunday with Charles to his attention, and he could, learn about some of this stuff. And I think we found him here.
You got him?
Let's see. This doesn't look like somebody who it's just a red square. I don't know if that's him.
It's more likely a Democratic candidate.
Well, I don't know. NYC lawyer, Buffalo native. Here he is. Looks like a young guy.
Oh, he is, I think.
Keith Wofford. Well, if he'll prosecute the Clintons, he's got my vote. Do I get to vote for Attorney General?
Well, for example, here you see Robert. Yeah, you do. Robert Harding at lee.net.
Yeah.
Reach out to him.
There you go. People can email the author of this article.
Yeah.
Very good. All right.
All right. So the other thing is that we have an interesting scenario here in Missouri, which is how you pronounce it, although it's spelled Missouri.
I know. It's a strange thing.
I
One
know.
of those things.
Now this is CNN,
Oh.
so it's probably not true. But what is true is that Josh Hawley, who's the Attorney General of Missouri, is running for Senate, and in that state, and in some polls, in a number of polls, is ahead of the Democrat Claire McCaskill.
This guy looks like he's 15.
Probably doesn't drink either.
There you go.
But they're going to try to make an issue in the state because the governor has been accused of egregious behavior with a mistress. They're going to try to make the Missouri race about sex. And to the extent they want to do that, I think we're going to have to start, I believe there's plans apace here to investigate the diabolical behavior of Bill Clinton and the enabling of Hillary and the tacit support of Chelsea of Bill Clinton's. Worse than, it wasn't a mistress that which is bad, bad if you're married and a politician, all that. It wasn't a mistress that Bill Clinton went after.
Multiple rape victims.
Yeah, and in particular, Juanita Broderick, a case that has received a great deal of publicity. I've met Juanita, I've met Paula Jones, I've met Kathleen Willey, I've met Kathy Shelton. This is not just one or two instances
Right.
of dalliances. This is Bill Clinton, in the time of the Me Too movement. If Jake Tapper and what's his name, Chuck Todd, are going to make an issue about Monica Lewinsky and Bill not apologizing to Monica Lewinsky, if the Democrats are going to go after this guy who has nothing to do with Greitens' issue with his mistress, to try to muddy this guy who's running to be a senator representing the state, then I think we have every right to add to the fire, the gigantic fire that we built now in the Clinton Foundation, the related issues of Bill Clinton for decades, taking advantage of vulnerable people, abusing those vulnerable people, and then using the considerable resources, first of the state of Arkansas, and then later of the federal government, and then later of the various rich donors around him, to intimidate people who might do what Rose McGowan did bravely. And it took a while, but now Harvey Weinstein is wearing an ankle bracelet and is going to go to prison if he makes it through the trial and lives through the trial. Why does Harvey Weinstein get singled out and Bill Clinton goes scot-free?
That is interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, because people don't want to admit they're stupid. I actually met that Nina Burley, at an event. She's the one who in 98 or 99 allowed herself to be quoted, for everything that Bill Clinton has done for women, I would willingly, give him a Lewinsky. She was a member of the press at the time. She was written a book.
Why is it her right to give Monica Lewinsky.
Not Lewinsky, Bill Clinton. That she would, that Bill Clinton was, even though.
Yeah, but this woman has the authority to sacrifice Monica Lewinsky to Bill Clinton and give it a pass?
No, that's not what she was saying. It's worse. She was saying that she would willingly, Nina Burley, would give Bill Clinton.
Calling the act a Lewinsky.
I'm calling it because of their children who could be watching.
I got it.
That she was willing to do that, and she got all kinds of press for that, favorable press. Favorable press because Bill Clinton has done great things for women, and you got to look back on this whole thing and ask yourself.
Applauding his behavior.
And much like was it James LeBron? Is it James?
LeBron James.
LeBron James's wife got a gigantic ring,
pink diamond,
yeah,
and also a lot of people don't know about this, a Lamborghini with an automatic transmission. He had some place in LA put an automatic transmission into a Lamborghini at a time that they didn't make that, and gave her all this incredibly expensive stuff.
And what did Bill Clinton do? He gave Hillary Clinton a New York Senate seat. If you think about it, it's more or less the same thing.
I'd rather have
and
the
so
Lamborghini.
If you want to go down this track, which they've gone down the track, it's fair game, I think, for Sunday with Charles and our friends and the Crowdsource the Truth people to now say, look, all right, you want to go there, you went there, just like Donald Trump, we're going to punch back even harder. And what Bill Clinton did, it's bad enough what he did to Juanita Broderick, which is atrocious, but what he did to Kathleen Willey, who was, we know Kathleen Willey is a good lady, a fine lady, to go after her, when Kathleen went in a moment of great need, when she didn't understand what was going on with her husband's personal life, with the family life, asked for help, and Bill Clinton assaulted her in the Oval Office, is the account.
It's like the lowest of the low.
And at that moment, almost at that exact moment, her husband killed himself, right? And Hillary supposedly, even after that moment, continued to be very much involved in the assault against the victims, Kathleen Willey, Juanita, and others.
They killed their dogs and stuff
cats,
like that.
And but the point is, you can't be an icon, the first female president, an icon for women,
and do all that stuff.
And do all this kind of stuff. History's not going to let you do that. Political cronies may, and a lamestream press might, but history will not let that happen. And since they've gone down this track, we're going to rev it up and make an issue of this.
Charles, how do you feel about Jake Tapper and who was the other dope saying that they ruined Monica Lewinsky's life? She wasn't raped as far as we know, right? She was consensual, and she's written books and been on TV. These other women have their lives have been crushed, and they didn't even mention them.
Well, in the case of Monica Lewinsky, I think the issue is that, and actually the law, I'm not a lawyer, but I understand the law is written so that if there's a big disparity in the power between the one person and the other person, then the issue of having given consent is an open question. Do you give consent for fear that if you don't, your situation in the workplace will be dramatically off?
But it's different than being physically attacked.
Right, and the Monica Lewinsky story is the story, I think, of perhaps a wild child, because she was pretty much a child. I don't know if she was 22 or 23 or 21. She was pretty young, and in a crazy environment, deciding she'd fallen in love, puppy love with Bill Clinton, with the president, and doing all this stuff in the workplace. It wasn't like they were getting a hotel room together. I mean, this was
the Oval Office,
or different parts of the Oval Office. This is not. It's difficult to argue as Bill Clinton, and as Hillary Clinton, and even as Chelsea Clinton, that you are a true advocate for strong women. If you're going to stay, if you, Hillary, are going to stay with Bill, not after just the Monica thing, but after all these other, and don't tell me that she didn't know.
Oh yeah, no, it's
so. If we go back into the guts here, we're almost done. Now, this is hilarious. This one here, this zero hedge.
That's interesting. Why is that not?
We're doing too many zero hedges.
No. I was over here. Here it is.
Kim commits to complete denuclearization. This happened at 11:42 this morning.
It's great.
All right. You remember what happened? All the naysayers, the Chuck Schumers, the idiot Chris Coons from Delaware, the senator, say, well, Donald Trump may have experience in business, but it's not the same as international relations. He doesn't know what he's doing. Nothing. And I've never done any kind of statecraft deals, but I've done big business deals and very large business deals, very complex business deals, and they're never done until after they close.
Right.
Right? I mean, you don't start doing victory dances and this and that. Even after a deal closes, it can get undone. People can immediately sue to unwind it. So you should tread carefully on this. And on the question, it's not like, North and South Korea have been close. There's been like this little border dispute over here. There has never been a peace treaty, never been an armistice in connection with this Korean conflict, which I believe began in early 1950.
Well, nor has there ever been a country divided that long. It's now far exceeded East and West Germany. And again, I did a movie in Korea in like 2010 or something like that, and through a translator spoke to a bunch of different South Korean people on the crew, and they had cousins and stuff in North Korea. The cinematographer on that film had actually traveled to North Korea. So I think there's a lot to this. I think there's a lot of people within Korea who want to see it unified. As we discussed, I think there's, it's a very industrious nation, and this is the one picture where he doesn't look that happy, though.
That's right. You heard of what they're going to have for dinner or lunch. It's like, what? I don't want that. Anyway.
Yeah. So back to these slides.
And now for the final one. There are multiple people. It's easy to sell newsletters and attract a following by saying the world's going to end. Yeah. But this final piece here is a piece in Zero Hedge again, suggesting there could be at long last the ingredients are there for yet another crash. Now the last one was 10 years ago.
2008.
Right, and it is unusual to go quite this long without having a protracted negative retrenchment in prices. We're seeing signs of it in interest rates. When interest rates go up, as US dollar interest rates have gone up a lot, at least in percentage terms, off the base, when you see this type of upward movement in interest rates, it is not uncommon for asset values to go down, i.e. real estate values and stock prices to go down. And the issue here is that because interest rates have been so low for so long, people who could borrow have been prone to take excessively risky bets where they borrow a lot of money. In some cases, hedge funds borrow for every dollar that of equity, they borrow $10, $12, $14. So when you have a price movement down 8%, down 6%, whatever, you're wiping out the equity that a hedge fund might have in a given investment. And that can cause, that means that 6, 8, 10% moves in an asset price can trigger a follow-on set of effects where people who thought they could hold this high leverage position realize not only is the cost of holding it going up, interest rates are going up, but the value of whatever they bought has gone down.
It's a double whammy.
Double whammy. And so we could be seeing this play out. And typically what happens is that there's always a know-it-all who thinks that trees only grow to the sky, who's taken even more aggressive leverage. It's been proven right, for a long period of time, gets emboldened, gets even more aggressive, and then steps in it. And that stepping in it causes other people who had lent money to the aggressive person to lose money when the aggressive person can't repay the debts. So we could be in a zone where there's going to be a little bit of reckoning here. And it's always the case, as happened in 2008, it was the German real estate land banks that nobody had thought about really carefully enough that got super aggressive. And the unwinding of those type of banks, real estate related banks in Europe, in the UK and Germany, elsewhere, exacerbated the downward movements in 2008. So I don't know what the land banks are, the analog is in 2018, but I would encourage people, this is not a moment to be excessively risk-prone in the market. We're going into the summer. We're going into a period where there's a lot of potential instability around the world. This is a moment to trim back your debt if you can, and to think cautiously and judiciously about your risk appetite for investing.
So the land banks, that's not at all related to the land shark, huh?
No, no.
Oh, that's something I immediately came to mind when you mentioned that. That could have a major effect on the economy if you're not careful.
That's right.
The land shark. Well, so Charles, I think that's it for the presentation, and my yammering has taken us a bit beyond the 90 minutes that you had promised. I do want to bring people's attention to this situation with Tommy Robinson. I was not that familiar with Tommy. I'd heard his name before, but he was arrested, of course, just before the weekend in the UK. And as I understand it, Tommy was reporting on a trial there in the UK, some individuals who are groomers, who are, luring children into some sex trafficking situation. And the mere act of this, a video from Rebel Media. People can watch the whole video on the Rebel Media YouTube channel. But this gives you Tommy's story essentially in his own words. He's talking about how he has been pursued by the police there in the United Kingdom. He's been arrested multiple times, never charged. He now has been thrown in prison for 13 months. And he is vehemently anti-Islam. He is against these imams that pop up in the UK and are pushing Sharia law, and in many cases putting pressure on the local politicians such that Sharia law has essentially become the de facto law and overridden UK law. So he's in jail right now, and I mean, they're trumping up charges like he's reporting on a case that's a closed case, so it's illegal to report on it. Obviously, the laws in the United Kingdom vastly different than here in the United States, but I think this is an important story for people to be looking at, because Tommy's not doing things that are substantially different than the types of things that you or I do, reporting on things that are not in the public's interest and things that are, government corruption, and it's resulting in him getting stuck in jail. There are a number of Muslim terrorists in the maximum security prison that he's in, and his life is at risk. That's widely known, but yet nothing is being done to protect him. So I don't know what we can do to help Tommy Robinson other than to educate people about what's going on.
Well, I've been on Ezra Levant's previous incarnation show at Sun News Media, and he's a very good guy who's fought his own fights in I think the UK, in Canada. And I think it's really radical Islam that they're against.
Yes.
They're not necessarily against Islam per se, but radical
Correct.
Islam.
I misspoke. Yes.
But just to make sure. As a suggestion, one thing that our viewership could do is go to the Rebel Media site and circulate this video to your followers. This is a wake-up call. The thing that's so precious, one of the things that's so precious in this country is the First Amendment, and you don't have that protection in the UK, and you don't have it in Canada. You do have it here. So when people talk about how we should be so willing to surrender the rights that our forefathers won for us, supported by their wives, our foremothers, and they were supported in a moral way, in a family way. We shouldn't be so quick to surrender these rights. Indeed, in the modern era, the last 2,000 years or so, our society, America, is the first country that actually got enshrined in a constitution, a legitimate legal document with authority, these rights, and changed the balance of power between would-be despots, be they be President of the United States, which I would argue Barack Obama, veered towards being a despot. Hillary Clinton certainly, in my mind, would like to be a despot. And it's the Constitution and in particular these amendments, which are so useful in giving the citizenry protection that we can express our views. Now, we can't go out and shout fire in a crowded movie theater. That you can't do. That's one limit.
And you can't falsely accuse people of crimes.
Without getting punished for it.
Right.
But you should be able to speak up, and often it's the contentious view. Galileo is one example, there are many others, that really irritates the establishment, but it's just that view that needs to be heard. So Tommy Robinson's case, I don't know the full particulars of it, but I would encourage our viewership to watch this video and to circulate it, and to read up on Ezra Levant, who's a great person as well.
Yeah, I will be doing that. This video by Tommy Robinson really opened my eyes to what he's been going through, and it's egregious. You know, another topic that you brought up many times, Charles, is your dislike, and I share this dislike, for these private intelligence firms. Some misguided person in the Periscope comments was talking about how the real SPYGATE story is Israeli Mossad black box. I think they're talking about Black Cube, which is a private intelligence firm comprised mostly of former Mossad agents that was brought to my attention by another YouTuber who I think plays an important role in the situation that I want to describe, because in the United Kingdom, perhaps the police do have laws that they can use to silence someone like Tommy Robinson, who wants to alert the public to these Sharia law practitioners putting pressure on the police to not allow people to cover the trials of these groomers and things like that. But you know, maybe the police can't directly do that in the United States, so maybe they rely on these, you know, private companies that aren't barred from doing things that the government can't do. And we've seen people coming out with all kinds of false statements, trying to put things, you know, on the record, as it were, with these fraudulent civil actions that put certain pieces of information into legal documents, which now, even if these statements are untrue, they can be referred to as being part of a federal lawsuit, and it creates this insidious sort of web of treachery that these individuals can, you know, keep going back to these lies. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to set me up, going into my information from businesses, ERISA filings, and things that have absolutely nothing to do with, first of all, there's no wrongdoing there. I mean, if there is a mistake, the IRS hasn't alerted me to it. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to stop me from communicating with people like you, who you are constantly drilling down on critical information about corruption at the highest levels of the government. They're trying to prevent me from speaking to people like Harmon Wilfred. They're trying to prevent me from speaking to Robin Gritz, Thomas Paine, all of the important people that I've had on Crowdsource the Truth. And not one of the things that they have brought forward is legitimate. So just like Tommy Robinson, who of course is in much greater jeopardy than I am, there is someone out there right now trying to frame me for a terrorism charge, manipulating situations that he himself may have been directly involved in. And what they're trying to do is to put me in the type of legal jeopardy that Tommy Robinson is now in. He's been financially decimated. Mike Flynn has been financially decimated. So these are horrible people doing horrible things, and we need to call them out. It's not simply a matter of ignoring trolls. With that, Charles, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I don't know. Do you have a Patreon account?
Oh yes, of course. I do want to remind people that Crowdsource the Truth is a community-sponsored news resource, and that is another way that the people I'm describing have tried to attack Crowdsource the Truth. They're using what I consider cyber terrorism tactics, constantly spreading lies over the internet, intimidating people. One of the people I'm thinking about right now even put together a list of what he classified as gang stalkers, which were merely people who are watching Crowdsource the Truth, and I think this was a very obvious effort to intimidate those people. The same person who's looking into these ERISA filings and finding nothing has basically threatened people who are contributing to Patreon.com. I want to remind anyone watching right now, people who are contributing financially to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth are in no legal jeopardy whatsoever. I've been in direct communication with the chief legal counsel at patreon.com, and he confirms my belief that the emails, the unsolicited emails to patreon.com, are coming from a person who has no basis in what they're saying, and who I suspect may be a very ill person who is acting in ways that could even be illegal. So definitely want people who enjoy the program to become sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth. Patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth is where you can become a monthly sponsor. And of course, one-time sponsorship payments can be made through PayPal and paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. Charles, thank you once again for a wonderful Sunday with Charles. I'll see you Wednesday, where you will continue closing in. And I think I might take the day off tomorrow and enjoy
Really?
Memorial Day.
You should.
Yeah, thank you very much. So if I don't see everyone tomorrow, we'll see you on Tuesday. Thanks very much for watching.